Hello, everybody. I know it's been a hot minute since I've really recorded anything for this channel. I am still alive, fortunately. And I wanted to make this tutorial because I've noticed that a lot of people ask about it, but to my knowledge, there's no tutorials out there for this. And the Warudo handbook doesn't really talk about it either. So, if you downloaded Warudo and were like me and were pretty confused at the keyboard and mouse aesthetic, then you're at the right place. I had to ask the Warudo Discord server, but I understand that not everyone has Discord or really wants to go out of their way to ask that kind of thing. So hopefully this knowledge that I impart upon you will be useful. You may have noticed during the onboarding that there was an option for a keyboard and a trackpad. And if you didn't select that, that's totally fine. We can still add them. And you don't have to have them always on. As you can see from mine, I don't have mine on right now. But if you did turn them on, you may have noticed that they don't look like mine. So how did I change this? And how do I recommend you go about it? Well, don't despair. I've got the solution for you. Now, if you didn't select them during the onboarding, you still can doing the little plus tool for adding an asset, and they're actually really well named where it's keyboard and trackpad. So you can just add them at any time you'd like. But I'm not adding any right now because I already have them. But you'll notice in the options that there's not really any options. There's enabled, there's the position, and there's a source, but it doesn't go to anything really. After you have a trackpad and a keyboard, the first thing that I want you to do is go into the Steam Workshop, which you can access via the regular Steam window, or you can actually access it here in the Discover tab, which is this little light bulb. And what I want you to search in the search bar here is the word hide, because it's going to be this node right here, the hide mesh renderer from asset node. What you do here is you just subscribe to it, and it should download into your Warudo. Then what I want you to do is go to your blueprints, and you can make a new blueprint. I named mine keyboard and trackpad, and there's a whole bunch of other messy stuff here, so don't worry about that right now. All I want you to do is search here, hide again, grab it, do root object, and there might be a lot of objects here if you're anything like me. And what you want is the keyboard and the trackpad, or just one of them, depending on what exactly you're trying to do. For now, I want you to just keep this as no, but when we're done, we will hit the yes. As you can see as I'm doing that, the, in my opinion, kind of ugly blue holograms that are the default show up again. Now here it differs a little bit depending on if you want to use a 3D asset or if you want to use an image. What we'll want to do again, either way though, is click Add Asset again. If your object is 3D, we will want to add prop, and that should be pretty well known by now. There's a bazillion tutorials on how to add props. However, if you are adding an image instead, like mine is, you'll want screen. So you'll see that I have two screen images here, one for the keyboard and one for the trackpad. Now, how do I recommend making these images? Well, the trackpad is pretty simple because it's just a square, and you can make that any way that you want. It doesn't really matter. You can make it any shape, really. But for a keyboard, you might want it to be a little bit more aligned to a real-world keyboard with all of its keys. You don't have to, but that's what I did. What I ended up doing was I just Google searched keyboard layout and ended up making a keyboard in Clip Studio where I just placed a bunch of keys that I liked the shape of, roughly in the placement of where the real-world keys are, on a new layer, of course, and then just deleted the keyboard layer beneath it. So if you'd noticed, mine are all star-shaped keys, which obviously goes better with my aesthetic than a blue hologram. Again, you can go crazy with this, it really doesn't matter. Once you have the keyboard or the trackpad images, you'll want to attach them to the keyboard and to the trackpad respectively. If you are using a 3D prop, you probably want to do this too. It doesn't really make that much of a difference, it just makes positioning a little bit easier. But that's what this is, the attach to option. Also, if you're using an image, you might have to size it down quite a bit. You can also bend the image a little bit if you'd like to. Mine has a very slight bend, but totally up to preference. If you have a 3D model instead, these are not options for that. It will just be attached to, and the usual transform options up here with enabled and disabled. Now, how would I recommend positioning this exactly? Well, just to let you know, you're not going to be able to exactly one-for-one it no matter what you do. But we don't have the holograms hidden yet. At least, don't have them hidden yet because this might be a little bit complicated if you do. But what I want you to do is think about the keys that you're going to be using most. For me, I play a lot of online games with my keyboard, so I use a lot of WASD. And from roughly this angle, preferably with your mocap off so you're not wiggling like I am, try to figure out what positioning of your fingers makes the most sense. For example, this is W, this is A, S, D. They're not exact. Like I said, you're not going to get them exactly, but spacebar is an easy one, but 1, 2, 3 can also be pretty easy, along with the little arrows here, too. As long as you get it to be rough, then that's totally fine. You don't need it to be exact. It's probably going to be too small for your audience to see anyways. And as well, for trackpad, you might want to check the upper corners and the lower corners when you are figuring out how to align it. It doesn't have to be one-to-one, but having a rough idea is probably best. Then I would recommend looking at your actual camera angles and figuring out what is actually going to look best. This is not an angle that I actually use my keyboard on, besides actually just like showing it to you guys right now, but in my gaming scene, this is not the angle that I use. So consider that as well. You might be able to get away with some weird angling that otherwise, like straight on view, might look just super weird on. Now, you're done. You have a keyboard and a trackpad that isn't limited to this blue hologram. Just remember that once we're done here, you have this hide renderer node that you just click yes on, and bam, they're gone. You have your actually really cool keyboard and actually really cool trackpad as well. Good job! I also have a couple bonus tips for you guys. You may already know this, but you can set up a keystroke or a Stream Deck toggle, set asset property, and then have it enabled target value to yes, and then you can turn on this keyboard. If you set it to be a toggle, then every time that you hit this, it will change. So mine right now is Alt and Control and A. If I hit that, both of those are gone. If I hit it again, they're back again. It's really simple. All you need is this set asset property, and to have it set as data path enabled, target value is yes or no, and depending on if you want it to be a toggle or not. I recommend it to be a toggle, just less buttons to have to worry about. Now here's a slightly more complicated extra bonus tip. How do you go about resizing it? Now, you might not even need this, but for me, I wanted to use this same thing as my drawing tablet as well. So this is the same image as my trackpad, but it's totally resized. How'd I do that? What I have here is a set asset property again. You'll notice I really like that node. But this time it's set to transform. Now, what I recommend is keying basically what sizes you want. You're going to need one set asset property for this size, this like mega huge size, and another set asset property for the old size. If you notice in my keybinds, if I can find them, in my A keybind, I have it so every time I do that keybind, it resizes itself back to like the small one. And that's both for, remember, the trackpad normally, because that's the data, and the image has to resize with it. So every time that I hit this key, it turns on the keyboard and the keyboard image, it resizes back down to the small trackpad, and also turns on the trackpad. But if I want this other one for my drawing tablet, which you can do drawing tablets other ways, but this is the way that I went about it, I have this other keystroke that sets asset property for both trackpad and trackpad image, and then it enables both of them. Here's my last and most recent tip, because I only found this out like a week ago. You might think that you cannot change your hand pose while using the trackpad because it keeps on overriding it in the regular menu. So how exactly do you go about it? I have a flip-flop node here, and make sure that you delay it, because I noticed if you have it set at the exact same time, it can kind of hiccup on it, so I just have a delay of a half of a second, which isn't too noticeable. I have a flip-flop, then I have it as override hand pose, and then I have a pen that I got in the workshop, and enable that. Then when I flip-flop it, so it turns back off, it takes about half a second, but you notice it disabled the override hand pose, and it also turned the pen off. Hopefully this tutorial was helpful to you. I've been meaning to make this for several months now, and I know a lot of people are stuck with that hologram when you don't need to. It's okay, you can make a whole nother one. You can set your keyboard and your trackpad to fit your aesthetic. It may not be as direct and straightforward as something like VMagic Mirror, but with that node that Vyasu made, thank you Vyasu, you can make your keyboard and make your trackpad whatever you want. Hope to see you guys around, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Have fun with Warudo. I love this program. Bye!